None of the injuries were caused during life, and none were caused by a serrated knife, or any knife for that matter. These are not sharp injuries. They have characteristics, and those characteristics are not identifiable or synonymous with a knife or any other sharp force type injury. The type of animals, there are small animals and large animals. The spacing of the wounds that two of the pictures I have brought here are not consistent with the serrations on the skin. When a dog or other carnivorous animal attacks a body after death or before death sometimes, they scrape the body. They move their claws on the body and try to bring the body closer to them. They do this several times. And you have here two of the victims that have the same identical injury, and the spacing and the configuration of those injuries is not compatible with a serrated knife such as this, or for that matter, any knife. I might say to you in just a couple of words, when these pictures first came to me, I couldn't understand what this issue was all about, because it was so obvious that these are animal product. And I so advised the attorneys. It took maybe seconds to make that observation. And of course, it took a lot longer to read the material and to identify detail, but as far as satanic, cult-type injuries, I failed to see those in any of these victims. There were obvious claw marks. There were, on all the victims, there was no evidence of sexual abuse. There was no evidence anywhere of anal penetration or mutilation or any way you want to call that. There was no other abnormalities on the bodies that would in any way conform with that with which was alleged to have occurred. I asked just a few minutes before the meeting started, I asked Dennis Reardon if he would allow you to view other pictures. He said if you so wish, then he will be glad to show them to you. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Richard Souveron. I'm the chief forensic dentist for Miami-Dade County, Florida, and have been in that capacity since 1967. I have published in Dr. Spitz's book, also in a handbook on bite mark identification, the degradation that occurs to humans by animals. Obviously, in my area, we see quite a bit of degradation from sharks, barracudas, alligators, which are not involved, obviously, in this case. However, we see degradation from other animals, such as dogs, number one cause. Deaths that have resulted from dog bites as recently as this year in Naples, Florida. A jogger was attacked and killed by pit bulls. So I've had some experience in that regard. Additionally, the bite mark evidence that I've dealt with obviously has been particularly in cases like Ted Bundy, was human bites on other humans. In this case, we're dealing with animal bites on humans. My opinion that these bite marks, and I concur with Dr. Spitz, that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at these things and know that these are bite marks and that they occurred post-mortem after death. The area that I'm going to be involved with is to, I think all of you saw the experiment with the grapefruit where the knife was hit into the grapefruit and said, see these spaces? They matched this knife, which was, quote, hidden in a lake. That's their job, is to be as inflammatory as possible. That knife was hidden in the lake. Well, they found a knife in the lake that's a Rambo knife. That's what I call it. That's the knife. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist or a forensic dentist or anything else to look at that serrations on the back of that knife and see these marks on these two human beings and saying that that back end of that knife made these marks. I mean, give me a break. That is the most ridiculous statement that I've ever heard anybody make, and to sell that to a jury is unconscionable, in my opinion. These are scratch marks from claws from some type of an animal, a carnivore, as Dr. Spitz says. The genital injuries, which we cannot show you because they're so graphic and so disgusting that it's not for television. I have a case in which that same type of injury is documented and occurred on an individual, and it's reported in a textbook. And animals will go for the genital areas. Animals will go for areas where there's blood. So in this particular case, in my area of expertise, number one, there are no knife wounds on the body. Dr. Spitz didn't say this, but he pointed out yesterday, there are no stab wounds. If somebody's going to use a knife, what do you do with a knife? You run around and scrape with it like this? I mean, come on. You stab with a knife. There are no stab wounds on these bodies. Any one of the three have no stab wounds. So this knife didn't cause any injuries. No knife caused any injuries. And the injuries to the body were post-mortem done by animals. Thanks.
With that, let's return to this case. Remember, there were 12 obvious problems, obvious factors that indicated Jesse Misskelley never saw these crimes occur. But given what we know now, how was it that Jesse Misskelley said anything about the genital mutilation of Chris Byers? Do you have a slide? Oh, I'm sorry. Why don't we go ahead with the case?
This is Detective Brian Reed of the West Memphis Police Department conducting an investigation for the incident of triple homicide, case file number 9305-0666. Currently in the office with Jesse Lloyd Misskelley Jr. What occurred while you were there?
When I was there, I saw Damien hit this one boy real bad. Then he started screwing him and stuff.
That is the only statement that Jesse Misskelley volunteered. Well, I saw him hit somebody real bad and start screwing them. We knew then, and we know even more now that the screwing thing never happened. It was a fiction. But he had made no reference to any knife. And it is Detective Ridge who at one point early in the statement said, who had a knife? And Misskelley then says, well, Baldwin did. And then he says, well, where was he cut? Misskelley says he's cut on the face. That isn't what they're after. And it is at that point that Ridge says, you know, another boy was cut. Ridge says another boy was cut. And he asks, where was he cut? And Misskelley says, at the body. Ridge says, is that the groin area? Misskelley says, nothing. I don't think he knows what a groin is. But then finally Ridge says, if he knows where his penis is. And then Misskelley says, oh, that's where he was cut at. And it's Detective Gitchell, not Misskelley, who supplied the name of Byers as the boy who had been cut. In other words, Jesse Misskelley never saw any genital mutilation because there was no genital mutilation by the perpetrator of these crimes. To the extent that his statement includes a reference to it, it's completely supplied by his interrogators.